My name is Becky, 30 years old. The rain came down in thin, steady lines against my apartment window, blurring Seattle's skyline into something ghostly and far away, the kind of night that made the city seem like it was holding its breath. I sat cross-legged on my sofa, a single chocolate cupcake sitting on the coffee table in front of me like a sad joke. Its one unlit candle leaned slightly to the side, as though it had already given up. 30. The big 30, and not a single call, not one text, not even a lazy Facebook message from the people who gave me life. I checked my phone for what must have been the 15th time in 10 minutes. The screen stared back, blank and unforgiving. No notifications, no missed calls, just my reflection, tired eyes and all, caught in the glare. The wall clock ticked over to 8 p.m. with a dry click that seemed to echo, and just like that, the day felt officially gone. A milestone birthday lost in silence. A lump rose in my throat, and I swiped quickly through Instagram, knowing it was self-inflicted pain. The scroll was mechanical, my thumb moving before I could stop it. There she was, Camille, radiant at her piano recital last night, fingers arched dramatically over the keys, spotlight bathing her in a golden glow. 78 likes already. The first comments glared up at me. Mom, our brilliant star, your father and I couldn't be prouder of your magnificent performance. Dad, that's my girl. Mozart himself would be jealous. The familiar tightness coiled in my chest. 30 years of the same pattern, and it still stung like the first time. I closed the app before my face crumpled and opened my camera roll instead. Images of the boutique hotel redesign I had completed last month filled the screen. Golden lighting, curved lines of custom furniture, the blending of modern glass with historic brick. The project that had earned me industry recognition and a substantial bonus, my proudest work, and yet not a single family member had asked about it. A tear hit the glass and warped the image, transforming the hotel lobby into something distorted. I wiped it with my sleeve, angry at myself. No one's ever going to celebrate you, Becky, I whispered into the empty apartment. Not the way they celebrate her. The memory hit, uninvited. Me at 10 years old, standing in the living room in a pink dress my grandmother had sent, hair brushed straight, hands clasped with anticipation. It was my birthday, and Mom had rushed through, calling, "Hurry up, we can't be late for Camille's recital." But what about my party? My voice had been small, uncertain. Dad had patted my head absently, already shrugging into his coat. "We'll celebrate next weekend, kiddo." We never did. That was the first time I understood how to fade into the background, how to smile louder than anyone while clapping for my sister. I stared now at the untouched cupcake, its frosting dull and crusted. I was 30, not 10. Shouldn't I be past this? Past the ache of being invisible? And yet here it was, gnawing again. Another milestone spent in shadows. The thought formed slowly, like a dangerous seed. My laptop was already open on the coffee table. I tapped the trackpad, and the glow of my bank account balance filled the screen. $97,342.16. Years of saving, plus the recent $68,000 bonus. Money no one knew about, because no one ever asked. I hovered over my phone, my pulse suddenly hot and quick. The idea felt reckless, almost absurd. But it was also the first time all day my heart beat with something like possibility. "Seattle Audi, this is Trevor speaking. How may I assist you?" The voice was cheerful, practiced. "Yes, hi." My own voice surprised me with how steady it sounded. "Do you have any Q5s in stock?" "We certainly do. Several models, in fact. Were you thinking of a test drive?" I looked at the sad cupcake, at the windows streaming with rain, at the phone that had stayed silent. "Actually, I'm thinking about buying one. Tonight." "Tonight?" A pause, then the salesman's smile slipped into his tone again. "Well, we're open another hour. I'd be happy to start the paperwork if you're serious." "I am," I said, and I meant it. Very serious. I ended the call, standing to catch my reflection in the darkened window. For a fleeting moment, I didn't recognize the woman staring back, shoulders squared, chin lifted, a defiance glinting in her eyes. "If they won't celebrate me," I whispered to the glass, "I'll celebrate myself." Keys in hand, I left the cupcake behind. The rain had eased into a drizzle, leaving the streets slick and shining under neon lights. By the time I pulled into the Audi dealership 40 minutes later, the lot gleamed like a showroom stage. Inside, a man in a crisp button-down approached. "Welcome to Seattle Audi. I'm Trevor." His handshake was warm, rehearsed. "What brings you in this evening?" "I called earlier, the Q5. I paused, savoring the taste of the words. "I'd like to buy one, today." He blinked, caught off guard, then recovered. "Of course, right this way." The midnight blue Q5 stood in the corner, its curves catching the overhead lights like liquid metal. It felt as though it had been waiting for me. I ran my hand along its glossy surface, and the reflection that stared back was altered, bolder, surer. "Would you like to test drive it first?" Trevor asked. "No need," I said. My voice surprised me again. "This is the one." In the finance office, a woman with silver-streaked hair slid papers across the desk. "How would you like to finance this purchase?" "I'll be putting down $60,000 cash," I replied, the words tasting almost foreign. "I'll finance the rest." Her brows flicked up. "People always underestimated me." "That's quite a down payment. May I ask your occupation?" "Interior architect. I just finished the Fairmont redesign." I didn't elaborate. Let them wonder. When my signature hit the final line, my hand trembled just enough to betray me, but the key fob was solid in my palm, heavy and real. "Congratulations," the woman said. Outside, Trevor walked me to the car with the pride of someone escorting royalty. My reflection in the paint shimmered under the dealership lights, framed like a halo. For the first time in years, I felt seen by myself. I drove home with the leather steering wheel under my fingers, the engine purring like a secret. In front of my building, I killed the lights and sat a moment, staring at the car's reflection under the street lamp. Defiant. Mine. Inside, my phone buzzed with a call. My chest tightened when I saw the name. Mom. I stared at the screen until the third ring before answering. Becky Elise. My full name. Never a good sign. "Where did you get that kind of money?" "No happy birthday, no how are you, just suspicion." "Hello to you too, Mom," I said, leaning against the cool metal of my new car. "I earned it." "That car costs more than most people make in a year." Her voice grew sharp. "Harold, come talk to your daughter about this nonsense." Dad's voice replaced hers, gruff and measured, the same tone he used when I broke curfew at 16. "Is this some kind of lease arrangement? Because financially this seems—" "It's mine, Dad. Paid mostly in cash, from my bonus." I cut him off. Silence stretched, taut as a rope. Finally, he said, "Well, that seems impulsive." A text preview flashed across my screen. "Camille. Wow. Didn't think you could afford something like that. Mom and Dad freaking out, LOL." Within seconds, the family group chat exploded. Messages piled in about my sudden extravagance, my irresponsibility, my choices. Not a single one said happy birthday. Mom's voice returned, clipped. "We need to discuss this. As a family, dinner tomorrow night. 6 sharp." I swallowed. An invitation or a summons? "I'll be there," I said. My voice held a steel I didn't expect. "But I'll be driving myself." When the call ended, I sat in the quiet of the car, my hands on the wheel, the city humming faintly outside. Tomorrow would bring reckoning. But tonight was mine. The next evening, I parked the Audi deliberately in front of my parents' Bellevue home. Gravel crunched beneath its tires, louder than it needed to be, announcing me before I even stepped out. Their bay window framed 3 silhouettes, Mom, Dad, and Camille, all standing as if they were actors waiting for their cue. I sat for a moment, breathing in the leather scent of the car, the hum of silence around me. The cake box rested on the passenger seat, simple white cardboard tied with a ribbon. Inside, in looping script on buttercream, the words I'd requested, "Happy birthday, Becky, from me to me." The woman at the late-night bakery hadn't asked questions, just given me a sympathetic look before carefully boxing it. That, I thought, was more acknowledgement than I'd gotten from my own family. The front door opened before I reached it. Mom's voice floated out, too bright. "Becky, what a surprise." Her eyes flicked to the car, then back to me. Dad hovered behind her, arms crossed. Camille smiled faintly, though guilt tugged at her expression. Inside, the air smelled of pot roast and rosemary, the same meal Mom made for holidays. The dining room gleamed under the chandelier, the polished maple table set with china reserved for important occasions. Never my birthdays. I placed the cake box carefully on the sideboard, as though I were carrying something explosive. We sat, Dad at the head, King in his castle, Camille to his right, Mom beside me, already pouring Merlot. "Wine?" she asked. "Water," I replied. My voice was steady. "I want a clear head tonight." The clink of silverware began, a performance of small talk. Weather, Camille's upcoming recital, the neighbor's renovation project. Not once did anyone mention my birthday. Not once. Finally, Dad cleared his throat. "So, that car must have set you back. Financing these days is a trap. Dealers will tell you anything to get you to sign." I lifted my glass of water. No financing. I paid most of it up front. A silence followed, heavy enough to press against my ribs. Mom set down her fork too quickly, the sound sharp against porcelain. Camille shifted, eyes flicking to mine as if she wanted to speak but couldn't. I let the silence stretch before standing. Slowly, I carried the cake box from the sideboard to the center of the table. The ribbon slid loose under my fingers. When I lifted the lid, the script inside caught the chandelier's light. "Happy birthday, Becky. From me to me." The word sat in the middle of the table, defiant, undeniable. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh, Becky, we don't—" "You forgot." My voice was calm, but it sliced the air. Again. Dad shifted uncomfortably. "Now that's not fair." "Isn't it?" I leaned forward, eyes locked on his. "My 16th birthday. You gave me a grocery store cake with my name misspelled, while Camille had a catered party with 50 guests. My 20th? You skipped it because it clashed with Camille's graduation. You left me home to watch the house while you went on vacation. And this year, not even a text." Mom's eyes filled with tears. "We never meant—" "It's not about what you meant, it's about what you did. Over and over, for 30 years. The grandfather clock ticked in the corner, punctuating the silence. Camille set her fork down, her face pale. For once, she looked less like the golden child and more like someone caught in crossfire. Dad exhaled, trying to reclaim authority. "Look, families make mistakes. You can't hold on to every little—" "Little." My voice cracked just enough to sting. 30 years of being invisible isn't little. Mom dabbed her eyes with a napkin, whispering, "We thought you were independent. Strong. You didn't need as much." The words landed like stones. Didn't need as much. I thought of the scholarship email I would one day discover, already marked red. I thought of the piano that had appeared in Camille's room when I was 18, gleaming and expensive, while my college fund shrank mysteriously. Seeds of doubt, planted long ago, flared again. I looked straight at Mom. "You call it independence. I call it neglect." She flinched as though I had struck her. Dad's jaw tightened. Camille finally spoke, her voice small. I never realized." "Of course you didn't." My words were flat. "You were always center stage." She opened her mouth again but closed it, guilt flooding her eyes. I pushed the cake slightly toward the middle of the table. "There it is. Proof I exist, even if I had to buy it myself." Dad leaned back, his chair creaking. "So you think throwing money around solves it? Buying that car, buying your own cake, it's reckless." Something in me snapped. That bonus I earned, $68,000, wasn't luck. It was talent, hard work, clients who respect me. You've never asked, never once stepped into one of my projects. But you sure notice when I spend my money." Silence. Mom reached for the sideboard suddenly, her hand hovering over an envelope I hadn't noticed before. She hesitated, then let it drop, retreating as though burned. "What's that?" I asked. "Nothing," she said too quickly. "Just something I've been meaning to discuss." Her voice shook and Dad shot her a warning look. My stomach tightened. That envelope sat there like a landmine. I wanted to rip it open, but not yet. I stood, my chair scraping against the floor. "I'm not asking for apologies or promises you won't keep. I'm telling you the dynamic ends here. I celebrate myself now, and I don't need permission." I picked up the cake box and closed the lid, careful, deliberate. "Consider this my gift to all of you. Proof that I'll no longer be erased." Camille whispered, "Becky, wait." But I was already walking to the door. Outside, the cool air hit my face like a slap. The Audi gleamed under the porch lights, patient and solid. I set the cake gently in the passenger seat, my hands trembling only after I closed the door. Through the window, I saw them still frozen at the table. Mom with her hands over her mouth, Dad glaring at the unopened envelope, Camille staring at me as if she finally saw me for the first time. I turned the key, the engine roaring to life. The headlights cut across the driveway like a blade. For 30 years, my voice had been muted. Tonight, I had carved it into the air. As I pulled away, one thought pressed against me, heavy and sharp. Whatever was in that envelope, whatever family matter they were hiding, it wasn't nothing. And I was finally ready to find out. The morning air along Pike Place Market carried a salt-sweet edge, gulls crying overhead, as if competing with the bustle of vendors setting up. I arrived 10 minutes early at the Elm Street Cafe, my hands wrapped around a paper cup that had long since gone cold. I'd chosen a seat by the window, the glass fogged faintly from my breath, offering a blurred view of Elliott Bay beyond. Camille was 5 minutes late, her punctuality for recitals never extending to real life. She appeared finally, tall and graceful even in jeans, her hair pulled back in a knot that looked effortless, but probably took 20 minutes. She spotted me instantly, hesitated, then crossed the cafe with that concert hall poise she'd carried since childhood. "Hey," she said, sliding into the chair across from me. She avoided my eyes, busying herself with the mug the barista set down. Her hands wrapped around it too tightly, knuckles pale. "I ordered you a latte," I said quietly. "You still take almond milk?" She blinked, surprised. "Yeah, thanks." She lifted the cup but didn't drink. For a long moment, the only sound between us was the hiss of the espresso machine. "Becky," she began, her voice already shaking. "Last night, I didn't realize. I didn't know how much—" "You didn't know?" I let out a short, humorless laugh. "Camille, you were the reason." Her face crumpled, but I didn't stop. "You got the spotlight, the parties, the attention. Meanwhile, I was background music. How could you not notice?" "I thought—" She faltered, searching for words. "I thought you were okay with it. You were always so steady, cheering louder than anyone. I told myself you didn't mind." Her voice cracked. "But that's not true, is it?" No, the word sat heavy between us. Her eyes shimmered. For 30 years, I had only seen her cry twice. Once when she broke her wrist at 14, terrified she'd never play piano again. And once when Juilliard's acceptance letter came. Now here she was, tears trembling on her lashes, making her look less like the flawless prodigy and more like a sister who had finally run out of excuses. She leaned forward. "There's something you don't know about your college fund." My stomach dropped. "What about it?" Her hands tightened around the mug, nails pressing crescents into the ceramic. "Part of it was redirected. For me." I froze. "The Steinway in my room," she whispered. "The one I practiced on through high school. Mom and Dad used some of your fund to buy it. And later, for my conservatory tuition, too. They said it was a family investment, that you'd understand." The cafe sounds dimmed, as though we were sealed in a bubble. I heard only the rush of my own pulse. "They never told me," I said flatly. "They didn't want you to know." Camille's voice broke. "I found out later, after Juilliard, when Dad mentioned how everyone had sacrificed. I asked what he meant, and he said you'd be fine, that you were independent. I told myself you already had scholarships, that it wasn't a big deal. But it was, wasn't it?" "Not a big deal?" My voice rose, drawing a glance from the barista. I lowered it, sharp as glass. "That money was supposed to be mine, my chance to study where I wanted, not where I could afford. And they just took it?" Camille's tears finally spilled. "I swear I didn't ask for it. I didn't even know until it was already gone. If I could give it back, I would. Sell the piano." "Can you?" I snapped. "Isn't it even yours to sell?" She flinched. "Technically, no. It's in Dad's name. He said it kept its value better that way." I leaned back, bile burning my throat. Of course. Even her piano, the shrine in her room, was just another extension of their control. "I'm sorry, Becky." Her voice cracked open, raw. "I should have fought for you. Instead, I let myself believe their story, that it was practical, that you didn't need as much. I let myself benefit." The honesty in her eyes was unbearable. For a flicker of a second, I saw the little girl she used to be, sitting cross-legged on the bench, calling, "Come, listen, Becky," while my own homework sat untouched. I'd clapped until my palms stung, always telling myself my day would come. "You can't undo it," I said. My voice was quieter now, though no less sharp. "That money's gone. Those years are gone." "I know." She reached across the table, tentative, her fingers brushing mine. But maybe I can help now. Maybe I can be the sister I should have been. I didn't move my hand away. Not yet. She swallowed hard. There's more. Mom's been hiding something. I saw her take an envelope out last week, the same one she almost grabbed last night. She keeps it in the sideboard drawer. I think it's about money, or inheritance. Something Grandma left. Her words landed heavy. That envelope. The one Dad had silenced with a look. What do you know? I pressed. Only that it's addressed to you. I saw your name. The cafe buzzed around us. Orders called out, chairs scraping, but it all blurred into static. My mind tunneled back to Mom's trembling hand hovering over that envelope, her voice thin as tissue. Just something I've been meaning to discuss. I stood abruptly, the chair legs scraping. I need to see it. Becky, wait, Camille pleaded. Don't storm in. They'll just shut down. Let me help. Let me talk to Mom first. I stared at her, weighing the offer. For once, her eyes weren't lit with performance glow, but with something raw, vulnerable. Maybe guilt. Maybe love. Fine, I said finally. Talk to her, but I want answers. And if she won't give them, I'll find them myself. She nodded quickly, relief washing over her features. Okay, I promise. I picked up my cold coffee, dumping it untouched into the trash. Outside, the market was alive with tourists and fishmongers, laughter spilling through the air. The world looked unchanged, but inside me something had shifted, an old wound reopened, bleeding fresh. I walked along the waterfront, the gulls wheeling above me, the sound rolling dark and endless. A single thought pulsed steady as the tide. For decades, they had written me out of my own story, but that envelope might hold proof, finally, that I had been wronged, not forgotten. And this time, I wasn't going to let them decide what I deserved. The apartment was quiet when I got home that afternoon, but not the kind of quiet that comforted. It was sharp, humming beneath the walls, as if the truth itself waited to be uncovered. I set my keys on the counter and went straight to my desk. The conversation with Camille replayed in my head, every word about my college fund echoing like a bruise pressed again and again. I opened my old laptop, the one I hadn't used since freshman year. It booted slowly, fan whirring like a tired breath. I remembered using this computer for scholarship applications, nights spent crafting essays that bled honesty. My hands shook as I navigated to the ancient email account linked to it, one I hadn't checked in years. The inbox loaded sluggishly, hundreds of unopened spam messages scrolling by. I scrolled back. 2009. The year I applied to the Pacific Design Institute, a dream school I'd quietly abandoned when funds ran tight. There it was. The subject line stood out in bold letters, even after all this time. Congratulations, Becky Blake. Scholarship award notification. My stomach flipped. I clicked it open. We are delighted to inform you. Full tuition, housing stipend, a golden ticket. But the message had already been marked as read. The timestamp was damning. 9:14 a.m. A Tuesday I knew I'd been in class, not home. The only people with access to that old desktop, my parents. My breath caught in my throat. They had opened it, they had read it, and they had never told me. I slammed the laptop shut and pressed my hands against my eyes, forcing the tears back. All those years I had believed I wasn't good enough, that my portfolio hadn't measured up, and all along it wasn't me who failed, it was them. The phone sat like a weight on the desk. I grabbed it before I could lose courage. Mom answered on the second ring, her voice carefully even. Becky, you opened my scholarship email, I said, skipping greetings. My voice was icy. Pacific Design Institute, full ride. You read it and never told me. Silence, then a sharp intake of breath. Becky, honey, you don't understand. Don't you dare, my voice cracked, rage rising like fire. I worked for that. I bled for that. And you kept it from me? Her words tumbled out, desperate. We were scared. That school was across the country. If you left, the family would scatter. Camille was still so young, and we needed you here. I laughed bitterly. Needed me? Or needed me invisible so she could shine? It wasn't like that, she pleaded. We thought we were protecting you. We told ourselves it was for the best, that you'd thrive anywhere, and keeping the family together mattered more. You told yourselves lies, I spat, and I paid for them. Her voice broke. Becky, please. Families make sacrifices, sometimes hard choices. Choices, I cut in, shaking. That weren't yours to make. You stole mine. For a moment, the only sound was her ragged breathing. Then softer. I wanted to keep you close. I couldn't bear losing both daughters to ambition. The words landed heavy. They weren't an excuse, not really, but a confession of her fear. I pressed my palm to my chest, steadying my breath. I'm meeting you, I said finally, tomorrow, and I want that envelope. No more secrets. She didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice was barely audible. All right. I hung up before she could add anything else. The night stretched long. I walked circles around my apartment, pausing at the Audi parked below, gleaming in the streetlight. Proof of what I could build without their permission. Yet a hollow ache spread beneath my ribs. For years, I had accepted invisibility as my fault. Now I knew the truth. They had orchestrated it. By morning, determination had hardened inside me. I arrived at my parents' house just before noon. The envelope waited on the sideboard, exactly where Mom had nearly revealed it before. She stood beside it, wringing her hands, while Dad hovered with his arms crossed. You wanted to see this, Mom said, sliding it toward me. The paper was thick, the handwriting familiar. My grandmother's. My name spelled carefully across the front, to Becky, for her first independent home. My throat closed. With trembling fingers, I tore it open. Inside was a letter and a photocopied document from the attorney. The words blurred for a moment, then sharpened. A modest trust, meant to be released when I turned 21. Enough for a down payment on a small house. Except the account was empty. The fund was liquidated, I said slowly, reading the final line. 10 years ago. Mom's face crumpled. Dad spoke first, his voice gruff. We needed it. Camille's tuition, her travel for competitions. We thought we'd replace it once finances stabilized. My vision tunneled. You stole my inheritance. Grandma left that for me. Becky, Mom whispered, tears streaming. We believed we were investing in the family's future, in Camille's career. It wasn't about taking from you. It was about choosing what seemed best. Best for who? My voice shook, but I didn't lower it. For Camille? For your pride in having a prodigy daughter? What about me? Dad's jaw tightened, but for once he didn't interrupt. I gripped the envelope, my fingers white-knuckled. Do you even hear yourselves? You decided my path without telling me. You told yourselves I was independent so you wouldn't feel guilty. But what you really did was erase me. The air between us was heavy, charged. Mom sobbed quietly, while Dad's silence was colder than anger. I placed the letter back into the envelope, sliding it into my bag. This belongs to me, not you. Dad's voice finally rumbled, low and uneasy. What are you going to do with it? I met his eyes. Whatever I decide, for once. Their dining room, once a place of Sunday dinners, and Camille's endless celebrations, felt foreign now. A stage where truths had been buried under chandeliers and polished silver. But today, the script had changed. As I walked out, the envelope heavy in my purse, I knew one thing for certain. They could no longer pretend. The lies had been dragged into light, and light, once cast, doesn't disappear. The invitation arrived 2 days later, folded neatly in my mailbox, with Mom's careful cursive on the front. Dinner Friday, just us, nothing fancy. The words were deceptively gentle, but I knew better. This wasn't just dinner, it was damage control. Still, something in me wanted to see how far they'd go. Would they pretend the envelope never existed? Would they minimize, twist, rewrite? Or would they finally face the wreckage they'd left behind? Friday evening, I pulled into the driveway deliberately late. Balloons in blue and silver bobbed against the mailbox, tethered by curling ribbon. I sat in the Audi, staring. Balloons. They hadn't even bothered with those on my 10th birthday. My hands tightened on the steering wheel before I finally forced myself out. Through the window, I saw Mom adjusting the chandelier crystals, Dad pacing near the table, Camille whispering something with her hand over her mouth. When I stepped inside, the smell of roasting chicken and cinnamon greeted me. Too sweet, almost cloying. Mom rushed forward, her arms open. Becky, sweetheart, you look wonderful. Her hug lingered longer than usual, perfumed and practiced. The dining room stopped me cold. The good china gleamed. Crystal glasses sparkled under the chandelier. Streamers hung in careful loops. And at the center of the table sat a large white box from McCrana Bakery. Dad stood awkwardly, his posture stiff. Surprise! Better late than never, I suppose. Camille stepped forward with a wrapped package in her hands. Her voice was softer than his. Happy belated birthday, Becky. I set my purse down, my throat tight. This scene was foreign, surreal. For 30 years, my birthdays had been afterthoughts at best. Now here was a spectacle, as if decoration could erase history. Dad gestured toward the cake box. Go ahead, open it. My fingers hesitated, then lifted the lid. Inside, a chocolate cake with buttercream frosting, the words piped in blue, Happy belated 30th, Becky. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Dad cleared his throat. We know we can't undo the past, but your mother and we've been thinking about how we've, not been as attentive as we should have been. The understatement nearly made me laugh. 30 years of forgotten birthdays, stolen opportunities, erased inheritance, all reduced to not attentive. Camille thrust the gift into my hands, cutting the silence. Open mine first. The paper tore away to reveal a sleek black frame. Behind the glass was a professional photograph of the Fairmont Hotel lobby I had redesigned. The project that earned me the bonus, the project that had given me courage to finally buy the car. Beside it, mounted carefully, was a clipped review from Seattle Architecture Monthly. They called it visionary, Camille said quietly. I thought you could hang it in your office, so you'd know people see you. The words struck deeper than I expected. For once, she wasn't the golden child basking in praise. She was the sister trying to lift me up. Thank you, I whispered. Mom clasped her hands. We wanted to make this right, to show you that we do celebrate you. I set the frame down, my voice steadier than my pulse. It's not about cake or balloons, Mom. It's about 30 years of choices. Dad shifted, clearing his throat. Speaking of choices, he pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket, the same one I had taken days ago, now replaced with a second copy. My stomach tightened. It's time we're honest, he said, sliding it toward me. Your grandmother left that fund with the best intentions, but life forced our hand. Camille's tuition, her competitions. We thought it was an investment in the family's future. We always planned to replenish it. We didn't expect things to spiral the way they did. I kept my face calm, though anger clawed beneath my ribs. So you made the choice for me. Again. Dad's eyes dropped. We did, and it was wrong. The admission hung in the air, shocking in its rarity. But we can try to make it right. How? I asked flatly. He glanced at Mom. She nodded, her voice shaking. We've spoken to the attorney. We're arranging restitution. A repayment plan, documented. It won't erase what we did, but it will acknowledge it. The words were fragile, as if saying them risked shattering the whole evening. Camille leaned forward. And I'll contribute too. The piano. No, Dad's voice cut sharp. That piano stays. Camille flinched. Dad, it's mine to give. It's part of our assets, he snapped. Don't meddle. Assets? My laugh was bitter. Is that what I am too? An asset you can shuffle around? Silence choked the table. Mom reached across, her eyes wet. We're trying, Becky. We really are. I pulled my hand back. Trying is easy after decades of erasure. Doing is harder. The chandelier cast fractured light across the table, glinting off crystal and frosting. I stared at the cake, the words written in icing, and felt a strange hollowness. I'm not here for a performance, I said finally. I don't want guilt-driven gestures or belated birthdays. I want respect. I want acknowledgement that I was wronged. And I want a future where this doesn't happen again. Dad leaned back, uncharacteristically silent. Mom dabbed her eyes with a napkin, nodding quickly. You'll have it, she whispered. We'll do better. For once, Camille didn't try to soften the edges. She looked straight at me, guilt still etched across her features. She's right. We all failed you. But maybe this is where it changes. I didn't answer. Not yet. The wound was too fresh, the history too heavy. I stood slowly, leaving the cake untouched. If you're serious about restitution, you'll put it in writing. Until then, words mean nothing. Their faces blurred as I turned away, the streamers overhead swaying gently like mocking applause. Outside, the night was cool and sharp. The Audi waited, steady and silent. I slid inside, gripping the wheel, the frame with my hotel photograph pressed against the passenger seat. Inside me, conflict churned, anger, grief, a flicker of something like hope. They had cracked open the truth, but cracks weren't enough. I needed foundations rebuilt. As I drove away, headlights cutting through the dark, one thought steadied me. They had stolen my past, but my future, my choices, belonged only to me. The following week unfolded in tense silence. No frantic texts, no calls filled with excuses, just stillness, as if my family were holding their breath, waiting to see if I would reappear. I didn't. I poured myself into work, sketching plans for a new client who wanted bold lines and dramatic contrasts, the kind of project that rewarded focus. But even as I traced lines on vellum, my mind circled the same truth. Restitution in words wasn't enough. By Thursday evening, an email arrived. The subject line, proposal. My chest tightened as I opened it. Attached was a draft agreement from my parents' attorney, outlining a repayment plan for the liquidated trust. Monthly installments, a full balance restored within 5 years, interest added. It was more formal than I expected, and yet, something about it still felt transactional, like settling a debt rather than addressing a wound. I forwarded the document to my own attorney, someone I'd hired on retainer after the scholarship discovery. I wasn't about to let sentiment cloud legal clarity again. His reply came quickly. This acknowledges wrongdoing. That's rare, but insist on transparency, bank statements, clear timelines, and signatures from both parents. The next day, I requested a meeting, not at their house, neutral ground, a conference room at the attorney's downtown office, sterile with glass walls and fluorescent lighting. If they wanted to repair what they'd broken, they'd do it under lights that didn't flicker with chandeliers and family portraits. When they arrived, Mom looked fragile, clutching her purse like a shield. Dad walked stiffly, his jaw clenched. Camille trailed behind, quieter than usual, but her eyes met mine with something almost steady. We sat across the glossy table. The attorney shuffled papers, but I spoke first. This isn't about money, I said, my voice calm but edged. This is about 30 years of erasure. Repayment is step 1, not the finish line. Dad exhaled heavily. Becky, families make mistakes. We admit that. We're here now, aren't we? I met his eyes. You're here because I forced you to be, because I found what you tried to bury. That's not the same as choosing honesty. He flinched, but said nothing. Mom's voice wavered. We were scared, Becky, scared of losing control. You were so strong, so independent. That's not strength, I interrupted. That's survival. Don't mistake the mask I wore for proof I didn't need you. Her eyes brimmed, tears slipping down her cheeks. She gripped the edge of the table, as though clinging to something solid. I grew up overlooked, she whispered. My sister was the shining star. I swore I'd never let that happen in my family. But instead, I repeated the cycle. I poured everything into Camille because I thought it would keep her close, keep the family together. I didn't see I was pushing you away. Her confession startled me. Not an excuse, but a glimpse of fear that had ruled her. The realization twisted something inside me. Her obsession with Camille wasn't just pride. It was desperation not to repeat her own pain. I kept my voice steady. You didn't just push me away. You erased me. Dad shifted uncomfortably, finally speaking. I was afraid too. Afraid of losing control. Afraid of you outgrowing us. You were always different. Fierce. I didn't know how to handle that, so I dismissed it. The words were stiff, but they landed like cracks in stone. Not apologies, but admissions. Camille leaned forward suddenly, her voice firmer than I'd ever heard. This has to change. I won't stand by anymore. If you can't see Becky, then you'll lose both of us. I'll contribute too. The piano, my savings, whatever it takes. Because she deserves what was stolen. Dad started to object, but her eyes snapped to his, sharp as broken glass. Don't tell me it's not mine to give. You used it as leverage my whole life. It's time it becomes more than a trophy. For the first time, Dad faltered. The attorney slid the papers across the table. The repayment plan is formal. Signatures here and here. But Ms. Blake has also requested transparency, monthly updates, proof of deposits. This is accountability, not just restitution. Mom's hand shook as she signed. Dad hesitated, then scrawled his name, his pen pressing so hard the ink bled through. I watched silently, the envelope with Grandma's letter heavy in my bag. Paper couldn't erase decades, but it was a start. When the signatures were complete, I spoke again. This isn't just about money. If you want any relationship with me, it has to be different. That means acknowledgement. That means showing up. That means not pretending Camille is the only child worth celebrating. Mom nodded quickly, tears still streaking her cheeks. Dad didn't move, but his silence felt less like dismissal and more like the weight of recognition. We stood. The conference room felt colder now, the glass walls reflecting fragments of us, me with squared shoulders, Camille with fire in her eyes, Mom trembling, Dad subdued. Outside, the city buzzed, traffic streaming like veins of light. Camille walked beside me, her hand brushing my arm. "You were incredible," she whispered. "I should have fought for you years ago, but I'm here now." I wanted to believe her. Maybe I even did. That night, back in my apartment, I placed the signed agreement beside the photograph Camille had given me. 2 artifacts of a shift, small, fragile, but real. My phone buzzed with a message from Mom. "Thank you for giving us a chance. We'll do better." Another from Dad followed minutes later. "Proud of your strength, even if I didn't say it enough." I stared at the words, unsure if they were sincerity or performance. Maybe both. I poured a glass of wine and stepped onto my balcony. The city stretched beneath me, alive and indifferent. For years, I had begged silently to be noticed. Now, at last, I had forced them to look. But the question lingered. Could acknowledgement survive beyond signatures and promises? Or would old patterns creep back the moment the spotlight shifted? I traced the rim of my glass, the cool air brushing my skin. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of the answer, because no matter what they did, I had drawn the line. And this time, the line wouldn't be crossed. 1 year later, the city glittered with late summer heat. Seattle's waterfront shimmered under the sun, glass towers catching the light like faceted jewels. My career had bloomed in that year. New projects, new clients, recognition I had once only dreamed of. The Harborview Hotel redesign had led directly to the Westlake Tower contract, my biggest yet. The invitations rolled in, industry panels, networking receptions, even this gala tonight, the Pacific Northwest Design Awards. I dressed carefully, choosing a sleek black gown that skimmed the floor, my grandmother's silver bracelet at my wrist. Camille met me at my apartment, her hair swept into a low bun, her gown a deep green that contrasted beautifully with her pale skin. She smiled nervously as we slid into the back of the hired car. "You ready?" she asked. "Always," I said, though my stomach nodded. It wasn't the awards that unsettled me. It was the knowledge that my parents would be there, sitting among Seattle's elite, watching me take the stage. The ballroom was a flood of light and chatter. Crystal chandeliers spilled prisms across polished marble floors. Waiters moved gracefully with trays of champagne, the air humming with expectation. My name floated on conversations I passed. "Becky Blake's project is revolutionary. She's the one to watch." For the first time, I felt the hum wasn't imagined. Camille touched my arm as we approached the table reserved for us. Mom and Dad sat already, dressed with care, their posture a mix of pride and unease. Mom rose quickly, kissing my cheek. "You look stunning, darling." Dad nodded stiffly, his voice gruff. "Big night." I slid into my seat, the tension beneath the surface taut as wire. The program began, awards handed out with polite applause. My category was last, a deliberate crescendo. I sipped champagne slowly, my fingers curled tight around the stem. Finally, the announcer's voice rang out. "For visionary integration of modern design with historic preservation, the Pacific Northwest Design Award goes to Becky Blake for the Harborview Hotel." Applause thundered. For a moment, the world blurred. I rose, the room tilting around me, Camille clapping hard enough to sting her palms, Mom dabbing her eyes, Dad's hands coming together in stiff but undeniable applause. I stepped onto the stage, the lights hot against my face. The award felt heavy in my hands, weighty with more than metal. My voice shook only once as I thanked my team, my clients, my colleagues. But as I looked out at the sea of faces, I found theirs, my family, and let my words linger. "And to those who once doubted me," I said, voice steady, "thank you. You taught me to fight harder, to believe in myself when no one else did." The crowd roared, perhaps thinking I meant critics, competitors. But my parents knew. Their stiffened shoulders told me so. After the ceremony, the reception buzzed with congratulations. Strangers toasted me. Photographers snapped pictures. Hands reached to shake mine. And then a reporter, notebook in hand, stopped in front of our family's circle. "Becky, congratulations. Tell us, what role did your family play in your success? Did they nurture your talent early on?" The question hung in the air, sharp as glass. I felt the room tilt again. This was the test. My parents' eyes widened. For a heartbeat, I thought Dad would interject, spinning the narrative, varnishing the past. But he stayed silent. Mom cleared her throat, her voice fragile but clear. "We had blind spots, Isol. she said softly. The reporter leaned closer. Mom's eyes shimmered, but she didn't falter. We didn't always see her the way we should have, but Becky's grit, her brilliance, it was always there, and we are so proud of her. The words landed like a tremor through the floor, not a confession of every betrayal, but something raw, unvarnished. The reporter scribbled furiously. That's beautiful, thank you, she turned to me. And what does it feel like to have that recognition now? I swallowed, my throat tight. It feels like the beginning, I said simply. The moment passed, swept away by more questions, more photos, but it lingered in me, a crack of light where once there had been only shadow. Later at our table, Camille squeezed my hand. Did you hear her? I did. My voice was quiet. I wasn't sure she'd say it. Neither was I, Camille admitted. But she did. Dad raised his glass awkwardly. To Becky, you've made us proud tonight. His words were stiff, but for once I believed he meant them. The night glittered on. Dancing, laughter, champagne flutes clinking. Yet beneath it all, I felt a shift. Not absolution, not repair completed, but re-engineering begun. The foundation was cracked, but cracks can be reinforced. Back at my apartment, the award gleamed on the counter, catching the city lights through the window. I poured a glass of water, my gown pooling around me as I sank onto the sofa. Camille texted soon after. She really said it. I think things are changing. I stared at the message, the weight of the year pressing down. They had stolen so much, scholarships, inheritance, recognition. But tonight, under blinding lights and watchful eyes, Mom had admitted the truth. And truth, once spoken, cannot be unsaid. I set the phone down. My reflection caught faintly in the dark glass of the window. My shoulders were squared, my chin lifted. A woman no longer invisible. And for the first time, I believed the shift might last. The award still gleamed on my counter weeks later, its polished surface catching morning light like a reminder every time I passed. Some nights, I would glance at it in the half-dark, and the memory of that gala, the applause, Mom's voice breaking as she admitted their blind spots, would replay like a film clip. A year earlier, I would have never imagined it. But the true shift wasn't in the award. It was in the small, steady changes that followed. Mom began calling me just to ask about my day, not in that perfunctory way where she'd half listen while stirring soup, but really listening. Dad's voice softened during conversations, no longer full of skepticism about my choices. And Camille, she was different altogether. She texted me photos of her practice sessions, but always paired them with questions about my projects, eager to share the spotlight rather than dominate it. Still, I didn't let myself be swept into easy forgiveness. Change is not one moment, it's maintenance. And boundaries, once drawn, are not to be erased. One rainy Saturday afternoon, Camille arrived at my apartment carrying a thick scrapbook wrapped in brown paper. She set it on the table with a nervous smile. "It's not much," she said, "but I thought you should have this." I peeled back the paper carefully. Inside, page after page, documented pieces of my life I hadn't known anyone kept. My college graduation, a clipping about my first design award, photos of the Harborview lobby, the Westlake Tower announcement, even snapshots of me standing proudly beside the Audi, that midnight blue Declaration of Independence. A note slipped free, written in Camille's handwriting. "I see you now. I'm sorry it took so long." For a long time, I couldn't speak. The scrapbook sat heavy in my lap, yet it felt like a feather against the years of invisibility. Later that week, an envelope arrived from my grandmother's attorney. This one wasn't empty. It held a modest endowment, overlooked in the original trust, tied up for years in probate. The letter inside explained that it had always been meant for me, and now, at last, it was mine. Not a fortune, but enough to seed something new. I held the letter against my chest, tears slipping unbidden. It was as though my grandmother had reached across time, placing her hand gently on my shoulder. That night, I stood before my mirror, fastening a silver compass pendant Camille had given me for my 31st birthday. "For the woman who found her own direction," the card had said. It rested against my collarbone, cool and solid, a reminder that no matter the storms, I had learned to steer my own way. On my desk sat the Audi key fob, next to the scrapbook and the attorney's letter. 3 artifacts of transformation, each one proof that I had carved my own worth into the world, no matter how often they had tried to erase it. A text buzzed across my phone. Mom, dinner Sunday? Just family. No reason, just us. Dad added moments later, I'll grill salmon, your favorite. I stared at the words. Once I would have read them with suspicion, searching for hidden motives. Now I let them be what they were, tentative offerings, imperfect, but real. I typed back, I'll be there, but I'm bringing dessert. The rain had started again, tapping against the window, steady and unrelenting. I stepped out onto the balcony, the compass pendant cool against my skin. The city stretched below, alive with headlights threading through wet streets. For so long, I had waited for validation, for celebration, for someone else to decide I mattered. But the truth was always there. Worth isn't given, it's claimed. The Audi still smelled faintly of new leather every time I slid behind the wheel. It wasn't just a car, it was the moment I stopped waiting. It was proof that I could mark my milestones without permission. Now, with the scrapbook in my hands, the compass at my throat, and the letter promising new beginnings, I understood something deeper. Boundaries aren't walls, they're doors. And I was the one holding the handle. When Sunday came, I drove across Lake Washington, the tires humming a rhythm that steadied me. Balloons didn't wait at the mailbox this time, nor streamers on the chandelier. Just Mom at the door, smiling nervously, Dad behind her, holding a platter of salmon, Camille waving from the kitchen. I stepped inside, my compass pendant catching the light, not because I needed their recognition anymore, but because I had already claimed my own. And for the first time in my life, I felt not like a forgotten shadow, but like true north.